The sun hovered low over the New Mexico plains, casting long shadows across the dry earth as Caleb Hart rode into the town of Dry Creek. Dust clung to his coat and beard, and exhaustion weighed heavily on his shoulders. In the wagon behind him sat his two daughters, Lily and May, their small hands clasped together, their faces pale and quiet. 3 weeks had passed since they buried their mother beneath a lone cottonwood tree. Yet the silence in the wagon felt heavier than the grave itself. Dry Creek was restless that afternoon. Voices murmured, boots scraped the dirt, and men gathered in a rough circle near the jailhouse. Caleb slowed his horse, sensing trouble. Lily leaned forward, curiosity overcoming her grief, and May followed her gaze. In the center of the crowd stood a woman unlike anyone the girls had ever seen. Her wrists were bound with iron chains, her clothes torn and dust-stained, yet she stood straight, her chin lifted, her dark eyes steady and unafraid. She was Apache. The townspeople whispered accusations, raider, spy, savage, but none of the words seemed to touch her. She did not beg. She did not cry. She simply endured. Caleb felt something tighten in his chest as he watched her. He had seen that look before. In his wife's eyes during her final days, the quiet strength of someone who had already suffered more than words could hold. May tugged gently at his sleeve. "Papa," she whispered, her voice barely louder than the wind. "Why is she tied up?" Caleb hesitated. "Because folks are scared," he said at last. Lily studied the woman's face with solemn intensity. "She doesn't look bad," she said. "She looks sad." The Apache woman's eyes shifted then, meeting Lily's. For a brief moment, the noise of Dry Creek faded. No chains could hide the pain etched into her expression, nor the dignity that refused to be broken. Caleb felt a stirring he could not explain, a pull towards something dangerous and unfamiliar. That night, in the small boarding room above the stable, the girls lay awake while the town settled into uneasy sleep. The wind rattled the shutters, and somewhere a coyote howled. May clutched her blanket. "I miss Mama," she whispered. Caleb sat on the edge of the bed, his throat tight. Before he could answer, Lily spoke, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "Papa," she said, "we need a mother." Caleb looked at his daughters, then out the window toward the jailhouse, where the Apache woman waited in chains. In that moment, he understood that grief had opened, a door none of them were prepared to walk through, and that once crossed, there would be no turning back. Morning broke over Dry Creek with a restless energy, as if the town itself sensed something was about to go wrong. Word spread quickly that Caleb Hart had spoken to the sheriff before sunrise, and by the time the sun cleared the rooftops, men were already gathering near the jailhouse. Some laughed in disbelief, others muttered curses, but all of them watched as Caleb stood firm, his jaw set, his hat pulled low. He offered to take responsibility for the Apache woman until the army arrived to collect her. He said she would work on his ranch, that she would be watched, that no harm would come to the town. The sheriff shook his head and called him a fool, but the jail was full, and the fort was days away. Reluctantly, with warnings sharp as knives, the sheriff agreed. When the chains were unlocked, the sound of iron hitting the ground echoed like a gunshot. The woman did not run. She straightened her shoulders and waited, her eyes flicking briefly to Caleb and then to the two girls standing close behind him. Lily held May's hand tightly, as though afraid the moment might vanish if she let go. The ride to the ranch passed in near silence. Dust rose around the horses' hooves, and the woman sat rigid in the wagon, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Only once did she speak, her voice low and careful. "Naili," she said, pressing a hand to her chest. Caleb nodded, accepting the name as one accepts a fragile truth. Life at the Hart Ranch began cautiously. Naili moved as though every step had to be earned, watching the land, the house, the people. She worked without being asked, sweeping the floor, drawing water, mending what she could with practiced hands. The girls followed her like shadows. May offered her small gifts, a ribbon, a piece of bread, while Lily asked questions Naili could barely understand, filling the air with nervous chatter. At night, the house felt less empty. Naili hummed softly as she prepared food, melodies shaped by another world, another life. The girls fell asleep to the sound, their breathing slow and even, something Caleb had not seen since their mother died. He stood in the doorway listening, unsure whether to feel comfort or fear. Trouble lingered like a cloud on the horizon. Riders passed the ranch too often, their stares hard and suspicious. Smoke curled from distant hills one evening, thin and deliberate. Caleb noticed how Nayeli paused when she saw it, her face tightening. Her eyes filled with knowledge she did not share. As night settled in, Caleb understood that mercy had a price. He had brought a fragile peace into his home, but the world beyond the ranch was already moving, and whatever was coming would not be easily turned away. Dawn arrived with a chill that cut through the stillness of the ranch, and Caleb sensed the change before he saw it. The horses were restless, stamping and snorting as if they smelled danger on the wind. Lily and May stood on the porch, clinging to each other, their eyes fixed on the distant ridge, where dark shapes began to move against the pale sky. Riders emerged from the hills, silent and deliberate, their figures growing clearer with every heartbeat. Apache warriors. Caleb stepped forward, positioning himself between the approaching men and his daughters, his rifle held low but ready. His mind raced with regret and resolve in equal measure, knowing there would be no escape if violence erupted. Nayeli came out of the house slowly, as though she had known this moment would arrive. Her gaze swept over the riders, then softened when it touched the girls. She walked past Caleb without a word, and stood in the open yard, her posture calm, her presence commanding. When she spoke, it was in her own language, her voice carrying across the land like a steady drumbeat. The riders halted. The leader dismounted, his expression torn between anger and disbelief. Their exchange grew intense, sharp gestures punctuating Nayeli's words. Caleb understood none of it, but he recognized the weight of a choice being laid bare. When Nayeli finally turned back toward the house, her eyes were wet but determined. "They came for me," she said quietly. "If I go, they leave you in peace. If I stay, they fight." May ran forward, wrapping her arms around Nayeli's legs, sobbing. Lily followed, her voice breaking as she spoke with fierce certainty. "You're our mother now. Mothers don't leave." Nayeli knelt, pressing her forehead gently to the girls. Her hands trembled as she held them, as though she were memorizing the feel of them. For a long moment the world seemed to wait. Then she rose and faced the warriors once more, speaking with a strength that surprised even herself. Her words were final. The leader studied her, then gave a slow nod. One by one the riders turned away, disappearing back into the hills without drawing a weapon. The tension drained from the air, leaving behind a silence so deep it felt unreal. Nayeli returned to the porch, exhaustion etched across her face. Caleb lowered his rifle, his hands shaking. He realized then that courage did not always come from the barrel of a gun, but from the willingness to stand between love and loss. As the sun climbed higher, Lily and May stayed close to Nayeli's side, as if afraid she might vanish. In that fragile morning light, a new family took shape, one born not of blood but of choice, sacrifice, and a love strong enough to defy the hatred of the world beyond the hills.